The massive ships hung in space like sleeping giants. Each one was bigger than a mountain, their dark hulls gleaming under the light of 3 orange suns. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as more vessels arrived through the jump gates. The sight filled him with pride and satisfaction. 9,900 ships, the largest fleet the Valthon Empire had ever assembled. Each ship carried enough firepower to turn a planet into dust. The crews were ready. The weapons were charged. Victory was certain. Kethvar looked at the holographic display showing their target, a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star, the third world in a system called Sol. The humans called it Earth, such a simple name for what would soon become another jewel in the Valthon crown. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, turning from a control station. "The final squadrons have arrived. All ships report ready for jump." Kethvar nodded. His people had ruled 7 star systems for over 1,000 years. They had conquered worlds with populations in the billions. They had faced enemies with advanced technology and crushed them all. These humans would be no different. The intelligence reports were clear. Earth had maybe 200 ships, primitive vessels with basic energy weapons and simple armor. The humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were children playing with toys compared to the might of the Valthon Empire. "Begin the final briefing," Kethvar ordered. The bridge lights dimmed as a massive hologram appeared. In the center, it showed the Sol system in perfect detail. Every planet, every moon, every space station was marked and cataloged. "Target analysis," Kethvar began, his voice carrying to every ship in the fleet. "Earth has a population of 8 billion humans. They have colonies on their moon and Mars, but these are small and weak. Their military consists of approximately 200 vessels, mostly patrol craft and cargo ships converted for combat." The hologram zoomed in on Earth itself. "The planet has 12 major population centers and 3 main orbital defense platforms. Our bioweapons will neutralize their military within hours. Their surrender will follow quickly." Kethvar felt the familiar thrill of upcoming victory. The humans would serve as excellent workers once they were properly broken. Their planet was rich in resources that the Empire needed. It would be a profitable conquest. Far across the galaxy, on a space station orbiting Earth's moon, Admiral Deho was having a very different kind of meeting. The war room was quiet except for the soft humming of computers. Holographic displays showed ship movements throughout the Sol system. 20 of Earth's top military commanders sat around a curved table, their faces serious. "The deep space sensors picked them up 3 days ago," Deho said, pointing to a display. "A massive fleet moving toward our system. We estimate close to 10,000 ships." Captain Hyajin leaned forward. She was young for her rank, but her work on experimental weapons had earned her a place at this table. "Do we know what they want?" "They haven't tried to communicate," Commander Taemin replied. "He ran the orbital defense platforms around Earth. But a fleet that size isn't coming here to trade." Deho stood and walked to the main display. "Our intelligence suggests these are Valthons. They've been expanding their empire for centuries. Every world they've conquered has the same story. A massive fleet arrives. They demand surrender. If the planet refuses, they destroy it." The room was silent. Everyone knew Earth's official military strength. 200 ships, mostly older vessels with standard weapons. On paper, they didn't stand a chance against 10,000 enemy warships. But Admiral Deho smiled slightly. "What they don't know is that we've been preparing for this day for over 20 years. Captain Subin, commander of the heavy cruiser Incheon, spoke up. "Sir, are you talking about the classified projects?" "All of them," Deho confirmed. "Project Mirror Shield, the neural network system, the Prometheus Protocol, everything we've built in secret while pretending to be a weak, divided species." He touched a control, and the display changed. Instead of showing 200 ships, It now showed the true strength of Earth's defenses. Hidden weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt, stealth ships that didn't appear on any official records, defense systems that had been disguised as civilian installations. The aliens think they're attacking a primitive world with basic defenses, Daeho continued. They have no idea what humanity is really capable of. Lieutenant Min Ho, one of the youngest officers present, raised his hand. Admiral, what about casualties? Even with our hidden weapons, 10,000 ships. We'll learn why you should never underestimate the species that conquered its own planet before it even left its atmosphere, Daeho finished. Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never want to fight us again. Back in Valthon space, Admiral Kethvar was reviewing the final attack plans. The strategy was simple because it had worked so many times before. Jump into the target system at maximum range. Demand surrender. When the primitives refused, advance in overwhelming force and destroy their military. Land troops on the major population centers. Within a week, the planet would be under Valthon. Control. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, all ships have confirmed their assigned targets. First wave will engage the orbital platforms. Second wave will handle their pathetic fleet. Third wave will begin bombardment of population centers. Kethvar nodded. The bioships of his fleet were living weapons, grown in the breeding pools of his home world. Their hulls could heal from damage. Their plasma weapons could melt through any known armor. They had never failed to conquer a world. What do we know about human psychology? He asked. They are pack animals like most species, came the reply. They form emotional bonds with their offspring and mates. They fear death and pain. Standard intimidation tactics should prove effective. Good. Make sure the first attacks target their civilian areas. Nothing breaks a species faster than watching their young die. The Admiral looked out at his fleet one more time. Ships as far as the eye could see, each one a perfect killing machine. The humans would take one look at this armada and surrender. Immediately. It would be over before it truly began. On Earth, the final preparations were complete. Captain Hae-Jin stood in the command center of Research Station Alpha, hidden inside what appeared to be a civilian mining facility. Around her, dozens of scientists and technicians worked at control stations. Mirror shield status? She asked. All satellites are in position and ready, Dr. Yunji replied. The metamaterial arrays are fully charged. Neural network? Connected and tested. All ship commanders have confirmed successful interface. Prometheus protocol? The asteroid belt positions are locked in. Hunter-killer production is at maximum capacity. Hae-Jin nodded. Everything humanity had worked for, everything they had built in secret, was ready. The aliens thought they were attacking a weak, unprepared world. They were about to discover their mistake. Her communicator buzzed. It was Admiral Daeho. Captain, long-range sensors show the enemy fleet has begun their jump sequence. Time to arrival, 6 hours. Understood, Admiral. All systems are green. Remember, Captain, they're expecting to fight the Earth they think they know. Show them the Earth we really are. As the communication ended, Hae-Jin looked out through the station's windows at the seemingly peaceful space around Earth. Soon, this quiet would be shattered by the largest battle in human history. But she wasn't afraid. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they first looked up at the stars and wondered who else might be out there. The Valthons were about to learn that some questions are better left unanswered. The alarm bells rang across Luna Station as the massive Valthon fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Daeho stood in the command center, watching the tactical display as thousands of red dots appeared on the screen. Even though he had been expecting this moment, the sight of so many enemy ships still made his heart race. "Contact!" shouted Lieutenant Min Ho from his sensor station. 9,873 ships detected. They're holding position at the heliopause. Daeho nodded calmly. "Open all communication channels. Let's see what they have to say." The main screen flickered and then showed the bridge of an alien warship. Admiral Kethvar appeared, his reptilian features twisted into what humans might recognize as a cruel smile. His skin was dark green with patches of lighter scales, and his eyes were yellow with vertical pupils like a snake. "Primitive humans of the planet Earth," Kethvar began, his voice translated by the Universal Communication System. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Valthon Empire. You will surrender your world immediately and submit to Imperial rule." Daiho stepped forward, keeping his expression neutral. "I am Admiral Daiho of the Terran Defense Force. We are willing to discuss peaceful contact between our species." Kethvar laughed, a harsh sound that made several human officers wince. "You misunderstand your situation, little mammal. This is not a negotiation. You have 72 hours to surrender your planet unconditionally. Your military will be dissolved. Your population will serve the Empire as workers. Your resources will belong to us." "And if we refuse?" Daiho asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then every city on your world will burn. Every ship in your pathetic fleet will be destroyed. Your species will serve as an example to other worlds that might consider resisting the Empire." The transmission ended abruptly. Around the command center, human officers looked at each other with a mixture of anger and determination. They had known this moment would come, but hearing the aliens speak with such casual cruelty about destroying their world still shocked them. "Well," Captain Subin said from her position at the Fleet Coordination Station, "they're certainly direct about their intentions." Daiho turned to address his staff. "All ships, maintain current positions. Do not power weapons or raise shields. I want them to think we're paralyzed with fear." Captain Hyajin's voice came through the communication system from Research Station. "Alpha. Admiral, the enemy is conducting detailed scans of our defenses. Should we activate countermeasures?" "Not yet, Captain. Let them see exactly what they expect to see. 200 outdated ships and some basic orbital platforms. The longer they believe we're helpless, the better." On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kethvar was reviewing the scan results with satisfaction. The humans had exactly what his intelligence reports had predicted. A handful of small warships, mostly converted cargo vessels with basic weapons, bolted on. 3 orbital defense platforms around their planet, probably armed with primitive missiles. "Tactical assessment," he ordered. "Minimal threat, Admiral," his weapons officer reported. "Their largest ships appear to be heavy cruisers, barely half, the size of our destroyers. Energy signatures suggest basic plasma cannons and kinetic weapons. No biotechnology detected. Estimated time to complete conquest? 6 hours from the start of combat, Admiral. Possibly less." Kethvar nodded. It would be even easier than expected. The humans clearly had no idea what real military power looked like. Their ships were spread out across the system in small groups, perfect targets for his concentrated assault forces. "Sir," another officer spoke up, "long-range scans show significant mining operations in their asteroid belt, multiple stations, and cargo ships. Excellent. Destroy them first. I want the humans to watch their infrastructure burn before we move on their homeworld." Back on Luna Station, Admiral Daiho was receiving reports from across the system. Every human installation was being scanned and targeted by the alien fleet. The Valthons were being thorough, cataloging every potential threat. "Admiral," Commander Taman called from the Orbital Defense Coordination Station, "the aliens are targeting our mining stations. Several cargo ships are reporting weapon locks." "Understood. Signal all civilian ships to begin emergency evacuation procedures. Make it look real." Lieutenant Minho looked up from his station. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy buildups across the enemy fleet. I think they're about to demonstrate their firepower. All stations, prepare for hostile action. Remember, we need to look surprised and helpless." The demonstration came without warning. 3 Valthon destroyers fired plasma beams at an asteroid mining station called Haven 7. The beams were incredibly powerful, cutting through the station's hull like it was made of paper. The mining facility exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen across the system. On his scout ship Daegu, Lieutenant Minho watched in horror as the mining station was destroyed. Dozens of his friends had worked there. Now they were gone, killed to send a message to humanity. "This is Scout 1 to Luna Command," he transmitted, trying to keep the anger out of his voice. "Haven 7 is completely destroyed. No survivors detected. The aliens weren't finished. Another mining station, then another, disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. Cargo ships carrying ore back to Earth tried to flee, but the Valthon ships were faster. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. Estimate 40 civilian casualties so far," reported Captain Subin, her voice tight with controlled rage. Admiral Daeho watched the destruction on his tactical display. Each red X marked the death of humans who had been doing nothing more than mining asteroids to support their families. The aliens were killing civilians to make a point about their power. "Sir," Communications Officer Young Su spoke up, "we're receiving another transmission from the enemy fleet." The screen showed Admiral Kethvar again. This time he looked even more pleased with himself. "Humans, you have just witnessed a small sample of Imperial power. Those mining stations could have been your cities. Those cargo ships could have been your warships." Behind him, displays showed the burning wreckage of human installations. "You now have 68 hours to surrender. For every hour you delay, we will destroy 10 more of your facilities. Your choice is simple: submit now or watch your civilization burn piece by piece." The transmission ended again, leaving the human command center in tense silence. Around the room, officers struggled to control their emotions. They had watched their people die while pretending to be helpless. "Orders, Admiral?" Captain Hyajin asked over the communication system. Daeho looked around at his staff. He saw anger in their eyes, but also determination. The aliens had just made a critical mistake. They thought they were showing humanity its weakness. Instead, they had shown every human in the system exactly why this enemy needed to be stopped. "Signal all ships and stations," Daeho said quietly. "Begin Phase 1 preparations, and send a message to the civilians. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten." Lieutenant Minho listened to the orders while watching the debris field where Haven 7 used to be. His friends had died believing they were helpless victims. They would never know that their deaths were about to trigger the most devastating military surprise in galactic history. The Valthons thought they had demonstrated their superior power. What they had actually done was give humanity the motivation. It needed to show these aliens what real power looked like. The countdown to their destruction had just begun. The Valthon fleet moved forward like a dark storm across space. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge watching as his ships formed into perfect attack formations. Each vessel was a work of art, grown in the biopools of his homeworld rather than built in factories. Their hulls were living tissue that could heal from damage. Their weapons were organs that fired concentrated plasma. "Signal the fleet," Kethvar ordered. "Begin the final approach. All ships maintain formation Delta 7. The massive armada, stretched across millions of kilometers of space. 500 ships in the lead, followed by wave after wave of destroyers, cruisers, and dreadnoughts. Each ship bristled with bioweapons that had conquered dozens of worlds. Their plasma cannons could melt through any known armor. Their regenerative hulls could survive direct hits from nuclear weapons. "Time to Earth orbit. 4 hours," reported his navigation officer. Kethvar smiled. The humans had not responded to his ultimatum. 48 hours had passed since his demonstration, and the primitive creatures still refused to surrender. It would make their defeat even more satisfying. "What is the status of human defenses?" he asked. "Unchanged, Admiral. Their ships remain scattered throughout the system. No signs of formation or coordination. Their orbital platforms show minimal energy signatures." Excellent. They are paralyzed with fear, as expected. On Luna Station, Admiral Deho was watching the alien advance with very different eyes. The enemy fleet was moving exactly as predicted, following standard Valthon tactical doctrine. Every ship in a predetermined position, following patterns that Earth's intelligence services had studied for years. All stations. This is Luna Command, Deho announced. The enemy has committed to their attack pattern. Initiate Project Mirror. Shield on my mark. Captain Hyjin's voice came through clearly from Research Station Alpha. Mirror shield standing by. All satellites report ready status. Around Earth, hundreds of small satellites that looked like ordinary communication relays began to power up. For 20 years, these devices had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as civilian equipment. But inside each one was a core of metamaterial technology that could bend light, energy, and even plasma itself. Sir, Commander Taemin reported from the Orbital Defense Command Center, the enemy lead elements will be in range in 30 minutes. Understood. All ships, maintain current positions. Do not power weapons until I give the order. I want them to get close. Lieutenant Minho was piloting his scout ship through the asteroid belt when he saw the first Valthon ships enter the inner system. They moved with terrifying grace, their biohulls rippling like muscle tissue. He could see weapon ports opening along their sides like mouths, preparing to feed. Luna Command. This is Scout 1. Enemy lead elements have crossed the Jupiter orbit. Estimated 500 ships in the first wave. Copy. Scout 1. Maintain observation distance. On his flagship, Admiral Kethvar was studying the tactical display with satisfaction. The human ships were exactly where his scans had shown them. Small groups scattered across the system. No coordination, no formation. It would be like hunting insects. Target the orbital platforms first, he ordered. I want them destroyed before we engage the ships. Yes, Admiral. All forward batteries charging. The lead Valthon ships accelerated toward Earth, their plasma weapons beginning to glow with deadly energy. Kethvar could see the 3 human orbital platforms hanging in space. Around their planet like primitive toys. In moments, they would be slag. Weapons ready, Admiral. Fire! 500 plasma beams lanced out from the alien fleet, converging on Earth's orbital defenses. The energy was enough to vaporize a small moon. The beams struck the platforms directly, creating brilliant flashes of light that could be seen from Mars. But when the light faded, the platforms were still there. What? Kethvar stepped forward, staring at the display. Impossible! Run that scan again. Scans confirm, Admiral. The platforms show no damage. Our weapons appear to have had no effect. Around Earth, Project Mirror Shield had activated at the moment of impact. The metamaterial satellites had created invisible barriers that did more than just absorb the alien plasma. They caught the energy, held it, and redirected it back along its original path. The Valthon ships suddenly found their own weapons turned against them. Plasma beams that should have destroyed human defenses instead struck the alien vessels with devastating force. Hulls that could regenerate from normal damage were overwhelmed by their own concentrated firepower. Admiral, the tactical officer shouted. Forward squadrons are taking heavy damage. Their own plasma is being reflected back. Kethvar watched in shock as 50 of his ships exploded under their own weapons. The biohulls tried to heal, but the damage was too severe. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed by their own power. Impossible! No species has technology like that. On Luna Station, Admiral Deho smiled as he watched the alien fleet's confusion. Mirror Shield is performing perfectly. Captain Hyjin, excellent work. Thank you, Admiral. The metamaterial barriers are holding steady. We can maintain this for several hours. The Valthon fleet pulled back, trying to understand what had happened. Admiral Kethvar ordered his science officers to analyze the strange defense. How were the humans turning plasma weapons against themselves? Analysis complete, Admiral, his chief scientist reported. The humans appear to be using some form of adaptive metamaterial technology. It creates barriers that redirect energy rather than absorbing it. Can we counter it? Not with plasma weapons, Admiral. We would need to switch to kinetic projectiles or attempt to overwhelm the barriers through sheer volume of fire. Kethvar felt his first moment of doubt. His intelligence reports had said nothing about advanced metamaterial technology. The humans were supposed to be primitives with basic energy weapons. How did they have defenses that his empire had never encountered? Signal the fleet. Switch to kinetic weapons. If they can redirect plasma, let's see how they handle solid projectiles. The alien ships began launching massive metal slugs at incredible speeds. These projectiles carried no energy to redirect, just pure kinetic force that could punch through any armor. But Earth had planned for this too. Captain He-Jin activated the second part of Mirror Shield. The metamaterial barriers shifted, creating gravitational fields that caught the projectiles and flung them back at their sources. "Sir," reported the Velthon tactical officer, "our kinetic weapons are also being redirected. We're taking casualties from our own projectiles." Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display as more of his ships were destroyed by their own weapons. In 20 minutes of combat, he had lost over 100 vessels without causing any damage to the enemy. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "How do they have technology we've never seen?" On Luna Station, Commander Taman was coordinating Earth's response. "All defense platforms report successful deflection of enemy fire. No damage to Earth installations." "Excellent," Admiral Deho replied. "Signal all ships to begin Phase 2. It's time to show them what human weapons can do." "Captain," Subin received the order aboard the heavy cruiser Incheon. Around Earth, 200 human ships that had been pretending to be scattered and confused suddenly moved with perfect coordination. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," Subin announced. "Engage the enemy. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The human fleet surged forward, no longer hiding their true capabilities. Ships that had seemed primitive revealed advanced weapons and armor. The scattered, confused defense became a coordinated attack that caught the Velthons completely off. Gardot Admiral Kethvar watched in growing horror as his supposedly easy conquest turned into a nightmare. The humans were not the primitives his intelligence had described. They were something far more dangerous, an enemy that had been preparing for this battle while pretending to be weak. The storm was just beginning. Admiral Kethvar felt panic rising in his chest as he watched more of his ships explode. The humans had turned his weapons against him, but that was just the beginning. Now their own fleet was moving with impossible coordination, attacking his. Scattered forces with precision that defied explanation. "Signal all squadrons," he ordered desperately. "Form defensive circles. Do not engage individually." But it was too late. The human ships moved like they shared a single mind. When one ship turned left, 20 others turned with it at the exact same moment. When a squadron fired weapons, every other squadron fired at precisely the same targets. It was as if the entire human fleet was controlled by one brain. On Earth, Dr. Yoonji monitored the neural network system from her command center deep underground. Around her, dozens of screens showed the battle from every human ship simultaneously. The quantum processors hummed quietly as they connected 200 ship captains into a single coordinated intelligence. "Network stability at maximum," she reported to Admiral Deho. "All ship commanders are fully synchronized." The neural network was humanity's greatest secret. For 15 years, volunteers had been training to link their minds through quantum interfaces. Each captain could see what every other captain saw, think what they thought, react as they reacted. The human fleet had become a single organism with 200 bodies. Captain Subin felt the connection flowing through her mind as she commanded the Incheon. She could see the battle from every angle at once, know exactly where every enemy ship was positioned, predict their movements before they made them. It was like having godlike awareness of the entire battlefield. "Target the heavy cruiser at coordinates 779, she thought. and immediately 19 other captains had the same thought. 20 human ships fired as one, their weapons converging on a single Valthon vessel that exploded in seconds. Admiral Kethvar watched his cruiser disappear and felt his confidence crumbling. How are they coordinating like this? It's impossible for so many ships to move with such precision. His science officer was frantically scanning the human fleet. Admiral, I'm detecting quantum communication signals between their ships, but the pattern is unlike anything in our databases. It's as if their crews are sharing thoughts. That's ridiculous. No species has ever achieved true mind linking on that scale. Sir, whatever they're doing, it's working. We've lost 300 ships in the last hour. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His perfect formation was in chaos. Every time his ships tried to coordinate an attack, the humans seemed to know exactly what they were planning. His vessels were being picked off one by an enemy that fought like a single massive intelligence. Signal the reserve fleets, he ordered. Bring forward all remaining ships. If they want to fight, we'll overwhelm them with pure numbers. 3,000 more Valthon ships accelerated toward the battle. Their biohulls rippled with anticipation as they prepared to join the fight. Surely 10-to-1 odds would be enough to defeat even these strangely coordinated humans. But Admiral De Ho had been waiting for this moment. All ships. The enemy is committing their reserves. Time to show them our real surprise. Captain Jin Woo received the order aboard his stealth destroyer Busan. Around him, 50 ships that had been completely invisible to enemy sensors suddenly powered up their weapons. The stealth fleet had been hiding throughout the system using quantum cloaking. Technology, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Stealth Squadron Alpha, engaging enemy reserves, Jin Woo reported as his ships appeared behind the advancing Valthon fleet. The aliens found themselves caught between two forces. The human fleet they had been fighting suddenly had reinforcements, appearing out of nowhere. Ships that hadn't existed on any scan were now firing from multiple directions. On his flagship, Admiral Kethvar felt true fear for the first time in his military career. Where did those ships come from? How many vessels do these humans actually have? Unknown, Admiral. Our scans showed only 200 ships, but we're now engaging at least 300. Some of them appear to be using stealth technology we've never encountered. The neural network allowed the human stealth ships to coordinate perfectly with the main fleet. Captain Jin Woo could see through Captain Su Bin's eyes, while she could see through his. The hidden reinforcements attacked with the same impossible precision as the rest of the human force. Commander Bora was coordinating the defense from Earth's surface, watching the battle through quantum sensors that could track every ship in the system. The Valthons were learning what it meant to fight an enemy that could think with hundreds of minds at once. All ground-based missile batteries, target the enemy dreadnoughts, she ordered. Hidden weapons platforms across Earth's surface opened fire, sending swarms of guided missiles toward the largest alien ships. The Valthons tried to adapt. Admiral Kethvar ordered his ships to split into smaller groups, thinking that would make them harder for the humans to coordinate against. Instead, it made them easier targets. The neural network allowed human ships to track dozens of small enemy groups simultaneously, hunting them down one by one. This is impossible, Kethvar said, watching another squadron of his ships explode. No species fights like this. It's as if they can read our minds. Pilot Sang Ho experienced the battle from the cockpit of his fighter. Through the neural link, he could feel the thoughts and reactions of every other pilot in the human fleet. When he dove to attack an enemy ship, 50 other fighters dove with him in perfect formation. When he pulled away, they all pulled away. As one. It's like being part of something bigger than yourself, he transmitted to his squadron. Like thinking with 1,000 minds at once. The sensation was intoxicating. Every human pilot, every ship captain, every gunner was connected in a web of shared consciousness that made them unstoppable. They moved like a school of fish or a flock of birds, but with the intelligence and purpose of a military force. Admiral Kethvar made a desperate decision. All ships, Ram the enemy vessels. If we can't defeat them with weapons, we'll destroy them through sacrifice. But the neural network saw the ramming attempts coming long before they arrived. Human ships moved away from collision courses with fluid grace, while their weapons targeted the approaching Velthon vessels. Ships that tried to ram human targets found themselves flying into empty space while human guns tore them apart. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "ramming attacks are ineffective. The enemy seems to predict our movements before we make them." Engineering Chief Nara monitored the network from her position on Luna Station. The quantum processors were handling the massive data flow perfectly, allowing hundreds of human minds to think as one without any lag or confusion. "Network efficiency at 98%, she reported. "All neural links are stable. We can maintain this coordination indefinitely." By the end of the 4th hour of battle, Admiral Kethvar had lost over 1,000 ships, while the humans had lost fewer than 20. His forces were scattered, demoralized, and completely outmatched by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever encountered. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal." Kethvar looked at the tactical display showing the wreckage of his once mighty fleet. The humans had turned what should have been an easy conquest into a massacre. But he still had over 8,000 ships. Surely that would be enough. "No," he said grimly. "Signal all remaining fleets. Converge on Earth. We end this now." He had no idea that the worst was yet to come. Admiral Kethvar stared at the holographic display showing his fleet's positions. 8,000 ships remained, but they were no longer the confident armada that had entered this system. His crews were frightened and confused. They had come, expecting an easy conquest, and instead found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. "All fleets, converge on Earth," he ordered. "Every ship, maximum acceleration. We overwhelmed them with everything. We have." The massive Velthon armada began moving toward the blue planet at the center of the system. Thousands of bioships accelerated through space, their living hulls rippling with determination. If coordination and tactics had failed, perhaps raw numbers would succeed. On Earth, Admiral Deho watched the enemy fleet's movement with calm satisfaction. The aliens were doing exactly what he had hoped they would do. They were bringing their entire remaining force into the perfect position for humanity's final surprise. "Signal Captain Wu Jin," Deho ordered. "Tell him it's time for the Prometheus. Protocol." Captain Wu Jin received the message aboard his command ship hidden deep in the asteroid belt. Around him, what had appeared to be simple mining stations for decades were revealing their true nature. Weapons platforms disguised as civilian installations were powering up massive cannons. Ore processing facilities were opening to release clouds of hunter-killer drones. "All Prometheus stations, this is Control Alpha," Wu Jin announced. "The enemy is committed. Begin Phase 1 activation." Throughout the asteroid belt, hundreds of installations that had looked like peaceful mining operations suddenly transformed. Rock processing plants opened up to reveal missile batteries. Cargo ships docked at mining stations released swarms of small attack craft. What the aliens had thought was empty space filled with humanity's deadliest weapons. Communications Officer Young Su coordinated the massive operation from his position on Luna Station. "Prometheus Control, this is Luna Command. All stations report ready. Estimated drone count, 50,000 units." The hunter-killer drones were humanity's most advanced weapons. Each one was the size of a fighter craft, but required no pilot. They were controlled by artificial intelligence that could learn and adapt during combat. Most importantly, they had been designed specifically to fight bioships like the ones the Velthons used. Admiral Kethvar was still focused on Earth when his sensors began detecting massive energy signatures from the asteroid belt behind him. "What is that? I thought we cleared all the mining stations." "Sir, we're detecting hundreds of new contacts in the asteroid belt. They appear to be weapons platforms." "Impossible. Our scans showed only mining equipment." The tactical display suddenly filled with thousands of new red dots as the hidden weapons revealed themselves. What had looked like empty space was actually a massive ambush waiting to be sprung. "Admiral!" his science officer shouted. "Multiple missile launches detected. Estimated incoming over 10,000 projectiles." The first wave of Prometheus missiles streaked toward the Valthon fleet. But these were not ordinary weapons. Each missile carried a payload of hunter-killer drones designed to exploit the weaknesses of bioships. The Valthon point defense systems tried to intercept the missiles, but there were too many. When the first missiles reached the alien fleet, they exploded and released their cargo of deadly drones. Captain Wu Jin watched the battle unfold from his command center. Drone deployment successful, beginning autonomous hunting protocols. The hunter-killer drones swarmed around the Valthon ships like angry insects, but instead of simply attacking, they began doing something that terrified the aliens. They started studying the bioships, learning how their living hulls worked, and then turning that knowledge into weapons. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as his ships began changing. The drones were somehow interfering with the bioships' natural healing abilities. Hulls that should have regenerated from damage instead began growing out of control, forming twisted masses of flesh that tore themselves apart. "What are they doing to our ships?" he demanded. "Sir, the enemy drones appear to be injecting some kind of virus into our biohulls. They're causing the healing systems to malfunction." Dr. Haywan had designed the hunter-killer drones with this specific purpose in mind. Years of studying captured Valthon biotechnology had revealed how their ships' regenerative systems worked. The drones carried viruses that could hack into those systems and turn healing into destruction. "Target acquired," one drone reported through its AI communication system. "Biohull analysis complete. Deploying regeneration virus." The virus spread through the Valthon ship's living hull like cancer. Instead of repairing damage, the biotissue began growing randomly, creating massive tumors that eventually caused the ship to tear itself apart from the inside. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count," reported the Valthon tactical officer. "The enemy weapons are turning our own biology against us." Admiral Kethvar felt despair creeping into his mind. First, the humans had turned his weapons against him. Then they had fought with impossible coordination. Now they were using his ship's greatest strength, their ability to heal, as a fatal weakness. "How do they know so much about our biotechnology?" he asked quietly. The answer was simple, though he would never learn it. Humanity had been preparing for this war for decades. Every Valthon ship that had ever been destroyed near human space had been secretly recovered and studied. Every piece of biotechnology had been analyzed and understood. The humans knew the aliens' ships better than the aliens did. Captain Wu Jin released the second wave of drones. These were even more specialized, designed to target the Valthon ship's nervous systems. Bioships needed complex neural networks to coordinate their functions. The new drones found those networks and destroyed them. "Deploying neural disruptor drones," he announced. "Target enemy command and control systems." The neural disruptor drones were smaller and faster than the first wave. They penetrated deep into the Valthon ships and began severing the connections between the biohulls and their control systems. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated suddenly became helpless, their weapons firing randomly or not at all. Admiral Kethavar's own flagship shuddered as neural disruptor drones found their way into its systems. "Engineering report!" "Sir, we're losing control of ship functions. The biohull is not responding to commands." Around his fleet, Valthon ships were becoming uncontrollable. Some spun wildly through space as their navigation systems failed. Others fired their weapons continuously until they overheated and exploded. A few simply shut down completely, their biohulls going dormant like sleeping animals. "All ships, retreat to minimum safe distance," Kethvar ordered desperately. "Get away from those drones!" But the hunter-killers were faster than his bioships. They pursued the retreating Valthons, continuing their deadly work. Each drone that was destroyed had already transmitted its learning to the others, making the swarm smarter and more effective with every passing minute. Communications Officer Young-Soo monitored the battle from Luna Station. Prometheus Control reports 80% success rate, enemy fleet showing signs of total system breakdown. Admiral Daeho nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Signal all human ships to maintain distance. Let the drones finish their work. The human fleet hung back and watched as the asteroid belt weapons tore the Valthon armada apart. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being destroyed by technology they couldn't understand or counter. Admiral Kethvar looked at his tactical display and saw only disaster. In 3 hours, he had lost another 3,000 ships to weapons that turned his greatest advantages into fatal weaknesses. The humans hadn't just prepared for this battle. They had designed it specifically to destroy Valthon biotechnology. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "perhaps it's time to consider full withdrawal." Kethvar stared at the display showing his broken fleet, but he still had 5,000 ships. Surely that was enough for one final assault. He had no idea that humanity's deadliest surprise was still waiting. Admiral Kethvar stared at what remained of his once mighty fleet. 5,000 ships hung in space around him, many of them damaged and barely functional. The biohulls that should have been healing were covered in scars from the human drone attacks. His crews were demoralized and frightened, but the Admiral's pride would not let him retreat. The Valthon Empire had never been defeated in over 1,000 years of conquest. He would not be the first admiral to return home in failure. "Signal all remaining ships," he ordered with grim determination. "Prepare the bioplague torpedoes." His weapons officer looked shocked. "Sir, the bioplague is a weapon of last resort. It will sterilize the entire planet's surface." "I am aware of that," Kethvar replied coldly. "If we cannot conquer this world, then no one will have it. Launch all bioplague weapons. Target every major population center on Earth." Deep in the weapons bays of the Valthon ships, horrible weapons began to activate. The bioplague torpedoes contained viruses designed to destroy all life on a planet. They had been used only 3 times in the Empire's history, turning once green worlds into dead rocks floating in space. On Earth, Dr. Hei-Wan was monitoring the enemy fleet from her research laboratory when the sensors detected the new weapon signatures. Her face went pale as she recognized what the aliens were preparing to use. "Luna Command, this is Research Station Beta," she transmitted urgently. "The enemy is preparing bioplague weapons. Repeat, they are deploying planet-killer viruses." Admiral, Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. The bioplague was the one weapon that could make the aliens' defeat meaningless. Even if humanity destroyed every enemy ship, the viruses would still kill everyone on Earth. "All ships, intercept those torpedoes at all costs," he ordered. "Do not let them reach Earth." But the bioplague weapons were already launching. Hundreds of dark torpedoes streaked through space toward Earth, carrying death for 8 billion humans. The Valthons had decided that if they could not have Earth, they would make sure no one else could either. Captain Do-hyun received the desperate order aboard his destroyer Seoul. "All ships, form up on me. We're going to ram those torpedoes." "Sir," his weapons officer protested, "ramming will destroy us too." "Better we die than let those weapons reach Earth," Do-hyun replied. "All power to engines, maximum acceleration." The human ships charged toward the incoming bioplague torpedoes, ready to sacrifice themselves to protect their homeworld. It was a suicide mission, but every captain volunteered without hesitation. But Dr. Hei-Wan was working frantically in her laboratory. Years of studying captured Valthon bioweapons had taught her their secrets. She knew something the aliens didn't. Know about their own plague viruses. Luna Command, I have an analysis of the bioplague composition, she transmitted. The viruses are designed to target Earth's original genetic patterns, but our population has been genetically modified for space colonization over the past 50 years. Admiral Deho understood immediately. Are you saying the plague won't work? Not completely. The viruses will affect some people, but not the majority. Our genetic modifications for radiation resistance and low-gravity adaptation have changed our DNA enough to provide natural immunity. It was humanity's greatest secret, hidden even from most humans themselves. The space colonization program had required genetic modifications to help people survive in hostile environments. Those modifications had been introduced gradually into Earth's population through medical treatments that people thought were simple vaccines. Dr. Ye Jin worked alongside Dr. Heywan, analyzing the bioplague structure in real time as the torpedoes approached Earth. I can create a complete countermeasure, she announced. We need 30 minutes to synthesize and deploy it. You have 20 minutes, Admiral Deho replied. That's how long until those torpedoes reach Earth. The human interceptor ships continued their desperate charge toward the bioplague weapons. Captain Do Hyun's destroyer was the first to reach the enemy torpedoes, ramming 3 of them and destroying itself in the process. This is Seoul, Do Hyun transmitted as his ship broke apart. 3 torpedoes down. Continue the mission. One by one, human ships sacrificed themselves to stop the bioplague weapons. Each ship that died saved millions of lives on Earth. The captains knew they were heroes, even if no one would remember their names. But Dr. Ye Jin was racing against time in her laboratory. The countermeasure was complex, requiring precise genetic targeting to neutralize the alien viruses. She worked with desperate speed, knowing that every second could mean the difference between life and death for humanity. Countermeasure ready, she announced with 5 minutes to spare. Deploying through atmospheric processors. Around Earth, civilian atmospheric control stations suddenly began releasing clouds of modified bacteria into the air. These bacteria would seek out and destroy any alien viruses that entered Earth's atmosphere. It was a planetary immune system designed to protect humanity from biological warfare. Admiral Kethvar watched his bioplague torpedoes approach Earth, certain that victory was finally within reach. Even if the humans destroyed his fleet, the planet would die, and his empire's honor would be preserved. But as the first torpedoes entered Earth's atmosphere, they began to break apart. The countermeasure bacteria attacked the alien viruses immediately, destroying them before they could spread. Sir, his science officer reported in confusion, the bioplague is not deploying properly. The viruses are being neutralized by some kind of atmospheric defense. Impossible. No species has ever developed immunity to our bioweapons. Sir, it appears the human population has been genetically modified. Their DNA is different from our original scans. Admiral Kethvar felt his last hope crumble. The humans had not only prepared military defenses against his weapons, they had prepared their own bodies for biological warfare. How long had they been planning for this war? The remaining bioplague torpedoes were intercepted by human ships or neutralized by the atmospheric defenses. Not a single virus reached Earth's surface intact. The weapon that should have sterilized. The planet had failed completely. Dr. Heywan monitored the results from her laboratory. Bioplague neutralization complete. Earth is safe. But the sacrifice of the interceptor ships had not been in vain. Their bravery had bought the time needed for the countermeasures to deploy. Captain Do Hyun and dozens of other captains had died as heroes, protecting their world from the ultimate weapon. Admiral Deho felt pride and sadness as he reviewed the casualty reports. Signal all ships. Honor guard formation for our fallen comrades. The human fleet formed up in a ceremonial pattern, paying respects to the ships that had given their lives to protect Earth. Even in the middle of battle, humanity took time to honor its heroes. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in complete defeat. His bio-plague had failed. His fleet was broken. The humans had countered every weapon, predicted every strategy, and turned every advantage against him. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet." Admiral Deho appeared on the screen, his expression calm but determined. "Admiral Kethvar, your bioweapons have failed. Your fleet is broken. This is your final chance to withdraw with what ships remain." Kethvar looked at the human admiral with new understanding. This was not a primitive species that had gotten lucky. These were beings who had been preparing for interstellar war longer than his intelligence services had believed possible. "You knew," he said quietly. "You knew we were coming." "We've been watching your empire for decades," Deho replied. "We studied your tactics, your technology, your biology. We prepared for every weapon you might use. Why didn't you attack us first?" "Because we're not conquerors, Admiral. We're defenders. But now that you've threatened our world, you're going to learn what human defense really means." Admiral Kethvar realized with growing horror that the battle was not over. The worst was yet to come. Admiral Kethvar felt desperation clawing at his mind as he looked at the broken remains of his fleet. 4,000 ships remained, but many were damaged and barely functional. His bio-plague weapons had failed completely. The humans had countered every strategy he could think of. "All ships," he ordered through gritted teeth. "Prepare for final assault. Target Earth directly. If we cannot conquer it, we will destroy it." The remaining Velthon vessels began moving toward Earth in a desperate charge. They had abandoned all formations and tactics. This was no longer a military operation. It was a suicide attack aimed at causing as much damage as possible before they died. "All ships, maximum acceleration," Kethvar commanded. "Ram their cities. Crash into their orbital platforms. If we are going to die, we take them with us." The bioships accelerated toward the blue planet, their hulls glowing from the heat of atmospheric entry. The Admiral had decided that mutual destruction was better than defeat. His empire's honor demanded that Earth pay a price for resisting Valthon rule. On Luna Station, Admiral Deho watched the enemy's final charge with calm determination. He had been expecting this moment. When cornered, the Valthons always chose destruction over surrender. It was a pattern humanity had studied for years. "Commander Taemin," he said quietly, "activate the gravity well generators." Commander Taemin's hands trembled slightly as he reached for the controls. What they were about to do had never been attempted before. The gravity well generators had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, hidden deep within Earth's core, for over a decade. "Generators coming online," Taemin reported. "All systems showing green." Deep beneath Earth's surface, massive machines began to hum with incredible power. These devices could manipulate gravity itself, creating fields strong enough to bend space and time. They had been built using technology reverse-engineered from alien physics and powered by Earth's own magnetic field. Dr. Yunji monitored the activation from her control center. "Gravity field generators at full power, ready to deploy defensive. Fields on your command." Admiral Deho took a deep breath. Using Earth itself as a weapon was humanity's last resort. If something went wrong, the gravity fields could tear the planet apart. But with 4,000 enemy ships heading for Earth in a suicide attack, there was no choice. Deploy gravity. "Wells, protect Earth." The effect was immediate and terrifying. Space around Earth began to warp and twist as artificial gravity fields sprang into existence. The approaching Velthon ships found themselves caught in gravitational anomalies that pulled them off course and tore them apart. Admiral Kethvar felt his flagship shudder as impossible forces gripped it. "What is happening? Report!" "Sir, we're caught in some kind of gravity field. It's pulling us away from Earth. That's impossible. No species has mastered gravity manipulation on this scale. But the evidence was right in front of him. Ships that had been diving toward Earth were suddenly spinning out of control as gravity fields grabbed them and flung them aside. Some vessels were stretched like rubber as they passed between areas of different gravitational strength. Pilot Kyung-soo led the last squadron of human fighters through the chaos. His ships could navigate the gravity fields because they had been designed specifically for this purpose. Earth's fighters used the artificial gravity like ocean currents, riding the fields to attack enemy ships that were helpless in the gravitational storm. "This is Fighter Squadron Alpha," Kyung-soo reported. "Enemy ships are completely disoriented. Beginning attack runs." The human fighters darted between gravity wells, striking at Veilthon ships that couldn't maneuver in the twisted space. Around Earth, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. The aliens' bioships, designed for normal space combat, were helpless against weapons that used gravity itself. Commander Taemin watched the battle from his control station. "Gravity fields are stable. Enemy approach vectors have been completely disrupted." 3 Veilthon ships managed to break through the outer gravity fields, still trying to reach Earth's surface. But as they entered the atmosphere, the planet's natural gravity combined with the artificial fields to create forces that no ship could survive. The first ship was torn in half as it passed between 2 gravity wells. The second ship was compressed into a ball of metal and biomatter. The third ship simply disintegrated, its atoms scattered across the upper atmosphere. Admiral Kethvar watched his ships being destroyed by forces he couldn't understand. "How do they control gravity? It's impossible!" His science officer was frantically trying to analyze the phenomenon. "Sir, the humans appear to have built massive generators inside their planet's core. They're using the planet itself as a weapon." "A planet as a weapon?" Kethvar stared at his display in horror. "What kind of species does that? The kind that had been preparing for interstellar war since they first detected alien signals decades ago. Humanity had spent years studying every captured piece of alien technology, learning the physics that made faster-than-light travel possible, and then weaponizing that knowledge. Engineering Chief Nara monitored the gravity generators from her station on Luna. "All systems stable. We can maintain these fields for hours if necessary, but it wouldn't take hours." The Veilthon fleet was being destroyed rapidly. Ships that entered the gravity fields were either torn apart by gravitational forces or thrown so far off course that they couldn't return to the battle. Admiral Kethvar's flagship was caught between 2 massive gravity wells that were pulling it in different directions. The biohull strained and cracked as forces beyond its design limits tore at the living ship. "Hull integrity failing," his engineering officer reported. "The gravity fields are too strong. We need to retreat." "No!" Kethvar shouted. "The Empire does not retreat." But his ship was already breaking apart. The gravity wells were pulling different sections of the vessel in opposite directions. Biohulls that could heal from weapons fire couldn't repair damage from gravitational forces that exceeded anything in nature. Captain Subin watched the destruction from her position on the heavy cruiser Incheon. The Veilthon flagship was being torn apart like paper in a hurricane. Other enemy ships were spinning helplessly through space, their crews probably unconscious from the gravitational forces. "Sir," she reported to Admiral Daeho, "the enemy flagship is breaking up. Admiral Kethvar's ship won't survive much longer." Daeho nodded grimly. He felt no satisfaction in watching the destruction of the alien fleet. This was not victory. It was the price of attacking Earth. The Veilthons had brought this destruction on themselves. "Signal the surviving enemy ships," he ordered. "Offer them one final chance to withdraw." The transmission reached the few dozen Veilthon ships that remained at the edges of the gravity fields. Most were damaged beyond repair, their crews shocked and demoralized by the complete failure of their invasion. "Veilthon vessels, this is Admiral Daeho of Earth Defense. Your attack has failed. Your fleet is destroyed. Withdraw now, or be destroyed with the rest." Admiral Kethvar received the message as his flagship finally broke apart completely. He found himself in an escape pod, watching the wreckage of his ship drift away in the twisted space around Earth. "Sir," his communications officer transmitted from another escape pod, 17 ships remain functional. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Kethavar looked at Earth through his pod's viewport. The blue planet hung peacefully in space, surrounded by gravity fields that had just destroyed the largest fleet in Velthon history. The humans had turned their own world into a fortress that no enemy could approach. "Signal withdrawal," he said quietly. "All remaining ships, retreat to the jump point." The surviving Velthon vessels limped away from Earth, their crews forever, changed by what they had witnessed. They had come as conquerors and were leaving as survivors, carrying a warning that would echo across the galaxy. Earth had shown them what happened when you attacked humanity's home. The 17 remaining Velthon ships limped through space toward their home system, their hulls scarred and broken. What had once been the mightiest fleet in the Empire's history was now a collection of damaged vessels carrying survivors who could barely believe they were still alive. Admiral Kethvar sat in the emergency command center of his new flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. 9,883 ships destroyed. Millions of crew members dead. The greatest military disaster in Velthon history, inflicted by a species they had thought was primitive. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from the homeworld. The Emperor wants a full report." Kethvar closed his eyes. How could he explain what had happened at Earth? How could he tell the Emperor that the humans had turned every Velthon advantage into a weakness? That they had been preparing for this war longer than anyone had imagined? "Sir, there's something else," the officer continued. "We're detecting quantum transmissions from Earth. They appear to be broadcasting on multiple frequencies throughout the galaxy." On Earth, Admiral Day-Ho stood before the main communication array at Luna Station. The quantum transmitters were sending messages to every known alien civilization in the galaxy. It was time for humanity to announce itself to the universe. "This is Admiral Day-Ho of the Terran Defense Force," he began, his voice being transmitted across thousands of light years. "The Velthon Empire sent nearly 10,000 ships to conquer our world. 17 ships are returning home. Let this serve as a message to any species considering aggression against Earth." The message continued with detailed recordings of the AO battle. Every moment of the Velthon defeat was documented and transmitted. The galaxy would see how the aliens' weapons had been turned against them, how their bioships had been destroyed by their own technology, how Earth itself had become a weapon. Captain Seung Ho surveyed the debris field that surrounded Earth. Thousands of destroyed Velthon ships drifted in space, their biohulls now cold and lifeless. The cleanup would take months, but the message was clear. Earth was not a world to be conquered. "All ships, begin salvage operations," Seung Ho ordered. "Secure any intact alien technology for analysis." The human fleet moved through the wreckage with professional efficiency. Every piece of Velthon technology would be studied and understood. Earth's scientists would learn new ways to defend against future attacks and perhaps develop new technologies for peaceful exploration. Dr. Haywan was already analyzing captured bioship components in her laboratory. The Velthon technology was sophisticated, but she could see its limitations. It was designed for conquest, not defense. The aliens had never prepared for an enemy that could turn their strengths against them. "Fascinating," she murmured as she examined a section of biohull. They never developed countermeasures for their own weapons. They expected to always be the attackers. Meanwhile, the surviving Velthon ships continued their journey home. The crews were traumatized and confused. They had served in an empire that had never known defeat, and now they had to explain how humans had made their conquest look effortless. "How do we report this?" asked the tactical officer aboard Kethvar's ship. "The Emperor will not believe that humans destroyed our entire fleet." "We tell the truth," Kethvar replied grimly. "We tell them that Earth is not what our intelligence reported. The humans have been preparing for interstellar war for decades. They studied our technology, our tactics, our biology. They were ready for us." The Admiral looked at the data recordings from the battle. Every moment of human coordination through their neural network. The impossible accuracy of their metamaterial defenses. The devastating effectiveness of their hunter-killer drones. Earth had not just defeated the Valthon fleet. They had made it look easy. "Sir," the science officer reported, "I've completed analysis of the human weapons. Their technology is unlike anything in our databases. They appear to have developed completely new approaches to warfare." Back on Earth, Captain Hyojin was coordinating the final phases of the cleanup operation. The gravity well generators had been shut down, returning space around Earth to normal. The metamaterial satellites were being recharged for future use. The neural network was being safely disconnected from all ship commanders. "All systems returning to standby mode," she reported to Admiral Deho. "Earth defenses remain fully operational." Deho nodded with satisfaction. The battle was over, but Earth's vigilance would continue. The message sent to the galaxy would bring new visitors, some hostile, some curious, some seeking alliance. Humanity needed to be ready for all possibilities. Dr. Yejin was already working on improvements to Earth's defenses based on lessons learned from the battle. "We can upgrade the metamaterial satellites to handle even more powerful weapons," she reported. The neural network showed some lag during peak coordination. "We can improve that too." The human species was doing what it had always done, learning, adapting, improving. The Valthon attack had been a test, and humanity had passed with devastating effectiveness. 6 weeks later, the 17 surviving Valthon ships arrived at their homeworld. Emperor Vashitar waited in the great throne room of the Imperial Palace, surrounded by his advisors and military commanders. They had expected to receive reports of a glorious victory and the addition of a new world to the Empire. Instead, Admiral Kethvar knelt before the throne with news of the greatest defeat in Valthon history. "Your Imperial Majesty," Kethvar began, his voice heavy with shame, "the Earth expedition has failed. Of 9,900 ships, only 17 have returned." The throne room fell silent. Emperor Vashitar leaned forward, his reptilian features showing disbelief. "Explain." Kethvar told the story of the battle in detail, how the humans had turned plasma weapons back on their attackers, how they had fought with impossible coordination, how they had used weapons that exploited Valthon biotechnology against itself, how they had turned their planet into a gravitational weapon. "The humans were not primitives, Your Majesty," Kethvar concluded. "They had been preparing for our attack for decades. They knew our technology better than we did. They were ready for us." Emperor Vashitar absorbed the report in stunned silence. The Valthon Empire had built its power on the assumption that no species could match their biotechnology and military coordination. Earth had shattered that assumption completely. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" the Emperor asked finally. "Avoid Earth at all costs, Your Majesty. Mark their system as forbidden territory. Warn all Imperial fleets to stay away." The Emperor nodded slowly. "Issue the order. Earth is declared a no-contact zone. Any ship approaching their system will be considered lost." Throughout the galaxy, other alien civilizations received Earth's broadcast and the Valthon survivors' reports. Species that had been planning their own attacks on the primitive human world quickly reconsidered. Some began preparing defenses, in case humans decided to expand beyond their system. On Earth, Admiral Deho stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at the stars. The cleanup was complete. Earth's defenses were stronger than ever. Most importantly, the galaxy now knew that humanity was not prey to be hunted. "Sir," Captain Subin approached with a new report, "long-range sensors are detecting increased ship movements throughout nearby systems. It appears our broadcast has gotten attention." "Good," Deho replied. "Let them watch. Let them wonder. And let them remember what happened to the last fleet that came here with hostile intentions." 6 months after the battle, the first human exploration ships launched toward Velthon space. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity's age of expansion was about to begin. The galaxy would soon learn that Earth's children could be explorers, traders, and allies. But they would also learn that humanity never forgot its enemies, and never forgave those who threatened their home. The age of human space had begun, and the universe would never be the same.